So exactly where does South Carolina rank historically now and in the future? The great Rob Knox joins me. He covered South Carolina all weekend long in Cleveland with me over at the Next. We're going to have a really enjoyable discussion about it all. Lockdown Women's Basketball starts now.
Ogunbowale for the win.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.
Well, hi everyone, and happy Tuesday. I'm your host, Howard Megdal. I want to thank you for making us your first listen here at Locked On Women's Basketball every day. More than 200,000 of you listened in March alone. You guys keep showing up for us the way we show up for you 6 days a week about all things women's basketball, past, present, and future. And of course, it is not just me, it is the incredible team over at thenexthoops.com, where we had 3.6 million readers in March alone. We are absolutely killing it in April as well. Make sure you're reading what we do, over 100 reported pieces every single month. Thenexthoops.com. It's $9 a month or $72 a year, and you just get it all sent right to your inbox. What's better than that? It is the Women's Basketball Network we have all been waiting for, and now it is here. And I was privileged to be joined by an incredible team, all working together, 8 strong in Cleveland this weekend alone. One of them, I still remember Rob Knox reaching out to me saying, "Hey, I'd love to write for you." I've known Rob. Rob does incredible work as an SID as well, is an amazing journalist and a friend. And so, Rob, when I heard from you, that was one of my favorite moments doing this work. Rob joined me this weekend in Cleveland to cover South Carolina. I guess, Rob, for you, at the end of a year where you've done so many different things for us, what did that moment mean to you to see what South Carolina was able to accomplish and to kind of be front and center for what Dawn and Camilla and so many others did here in the sport?
Well, good morning, and Howard, thank you for having me. Thank you for the opportunity. I mean, I can't express my gratitude to you enough for having me in Cleveland. It was one of the best times of my life. As somebody that has loved women's basketball and been there in the beginnings and can remember Gino's first undefeated season in '95, and Dawn Staley in the Final Four, and watching those games when I was an undergrad at Lincoln on Sunday afternoons, the day after the Final Four, to one day actually attend the Final Four and actually cover it is it still feels like a dream. Been around South Carolina all weekend. Oh my God, it is. I'm still on cloud nine. It was so surreal. And it's funny because as you mentioned, I am a former SID, and it's not much different from the standpoint of you work with your teams, you get your teams prepared for media training and so forth and so on. But being it from the media side, which is where my heart is and my passion is, and being able to cover women's basketball and witnessing greatness up close, and hearing from Dawn Staley every single day that I was in Cleveland. I felt like I was, in church at times. I felt like I was in a lecture hall. I felt like it was just a one-on-one learning discovery lab for me. Because Dawn is phenomenal. Dawn is amazing. She's an incredible person. So I was just privileged to be able to really cover South Carolina this weekend and really delve into the storylines. I think one of the things that, for me, what I wanted to do and my goal was to try to humanize South Carolina players, to try to find nuggets about the players that maybe maybe people don't know. Obviously, the Columbia media, the media that covers South Carolina on a regular basis, day in, day out, they do an awesome job, and I love the fact that Diana gives them access, as a reporter. Access is one of the things that we need, and that enables us to really tell quality stories and build trust and just just build so many things. And this past week, being able to write about Tessa Johnson on Thursday, and then obviously to see her have the game she had on Sunday was it gives me chills, right?
And to that point, and I'm excited about it in segment 2 because, like you said, being able to isolate on the individuals who make up this collective, because it's so easy to just think of South Carolina as this group, because they work together as a team, they are unstoppable, and Tessa Johnson, part of that being somebody who's just a freshman, and you had the chance to write about her, about Camila Cardozo, who is frankly the only significant contributor loss going into next year, and we'll talk about where South Carolina is headed there. Humanizing Dawn Staley, though, is so important in my mind now more than ever, because it is so easy to think of Dawn as an institution. It is so easy to think of Dawn as somebody who doesn't make individual choices that reflect on her legacy, but someone who is instead taken as this given. And I think we miss the Dawn moment. We miss the Dawn forest for the trees, if you will, when we don't isolate on things the way you did. And you have a story that's over at the Next right now, it titled "Staley Continues to Set Standard of Inclusivity and Excellence." You have this quote: "When you can treat people good, they treat you better," which I thought was so striking to me, and informs everything from what Dawn said about inclusion of transgender women to play in women's sports, to the way in which Dawn spoke very specifically about even Caitlin Clark and her impact. There's somebody with a generosity of spirit that seems to come from a basic place of humanity. Can you just kind of take me through what you see, where you saw those threads kind of come together in that story, which is just wonderful?
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I think, a lot of it, it came together from, as I mentioned, just listening to her, right? Just hearing her in the press conferences, and just hearing how she evolved as a leader. One of the things that I'm big on leadership. I read a lot of leadership books, try to evolve myself as a personal leader, especially when I was working in college athletics on a regular basis. Leadership is really important to me. And, I study how the great leaders think, and I study how coaches think, because I've been fortunate enough to be around a lot of coaches in my life. And, they're all different. They all have different philosophies, different things, or what makes them tick. But Dawn is different in the standpoint is that she's authentic, and she's very thoughtful. She's measured. And again, that moment during Saturday's press conference, here we are, talking about the game on, how you want to defend Caitlin, what's Caitlin's legacy, how do you feel about your team, the daycare, it was, the press conference was light, it was what it's supposed to be the day before for Coach Staley, just, light, she's going to give her media availability, then get back to preparing for Iowa. And then out of left field, comes that question. And it's a heavy question, right? Because not everybody's watching, everybody's listening, everybody's paying attention. And as they say in life, you have one chance to get it right. And that's unfortunate sometimes about life. You have one chance to get it right. And she didn't rush into that, and then that struck me. Like, wow, she didn't rush. She took her time and answered it really answered the way you'd expect. And then I'm thinking, I'm like, wow, it stuck with me all Saturday, all Sunday. And then when she's out there celebrating with her team, the first black head coach of undefeated team, and she's celebrating, and I'm sitting there, and first thing she says is, "Caitlin Clark, thank you for lifting up our game. Thank you. You are the GOAT." Just to take that moment, and then again, taking that piece of it, then taking what she said at the end of the LSU game, immediately about, obviously the ugly situation that occurred there, but apologizing right away.
Yeah.
In that moment. And I'm just like, man, Dawn is just so phenomenal. So those things stuck with me. And then obviously throughout the year of reporting on the SWAC and the MEAC, when I spoke with Jackson State head coach Tamika Reed, she mentioned that she got a note from Dawn Staley when Jackson State had received a vote in the top 25 poll, right? So again, for Dawn to take time out of her schedule to acknowledge that and do that, I'm just like, man, she is just amazing. And, I'm lucky from the standpoint of I grew up watching Dawn Staley. I followed her life. I followed her career. She's a few years older than I am. And we've been in a lot of the same spaces.
Yeah.
And so again, I have all this. So I'm lucky that I have some inside knowledge on Dawn, but then these big tentpole moments.
Attention to detail is what.
Yeah.
And it feeds into everything she does as well. More on Dawn here in segment 2, because again, there is a direct connection to my mind with everything that you just mentioned and the success that we are seeing on the court. So much more to come on Dawn, on South Carolina, on what it all means. Howard Megdal here, Locked On Women's Basketball, back right after this. Locked On Women's Basketball is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. And look, friends, you don't always have the luck of Rob Knox reaching out and wanting to talk to you about working at the Next. Sometimes you got to go find it yourself, right? And so LinkedIn Jobs is there to help. If you've got the small business that needs the right professionals for your team faster and for free, there's only one Rob Knox, but there are a billion people at LinkedIn Jobs, literally a billion people. That's why 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's something that we have done over at the Next. It's something that I highly recommend. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnba. That's linkedin.com/LOCKEDONNBA to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, they do apply. Howard Megdal, Locked On Women's Basketball, back here with Rob Knox, who was talking before the break about Dawn Staley's attention to detail as it relates to the way in which she handles everything from curveball questions, is the way you put it, to reaching out to others who are coming up through the pipeline and making sure that we have greater diversity, greater representation in coaching, and that when Black women are in coaching, that they feel supported. And Tamika Reed, the fact that she heard from her, the fact that Dawn Staley, when she won her first championship, sent out pieces of the net to Black women coaches in this space, following in, frankly, what Carolyn Peck did when Carolyn Peck won at Purdue and was the first Black woman to win an NCAA title. So, Dawn does these things off the court, and it probably matters more that she does these things off the court than she does them on the court. But it's more complicated than that because it resonates so much because of the standard of success she had. If she were simply a moderately successful coach, we wouldn't be talking about it in the same way. And so I want to talk about the fact that, everyone talked about South Carolina's depth and it was a slight edge in that championship game, right? What was the bench points? What
37 to nothing.
37 to nothing. I mean, just a ridiculous.
I've never seen that before.
No, but look at how and why that happens in the championship game. It's not just some outlier. Raven Johnson led this team in minutes per game this year with 27.9. So nobody is playing the enormous load that is often required of stars. And you got 5 players between 20 and 27.9. Chloe Titz at 18.6, Malaysia Fulwiley at 18.4, Tessa Johnson 17.9, and Sanaya Faden at 15.2. Again, what you have is a rotation of, in many ways, interchangeable players because they're so long because they can switch. You know, how many players where you look at this South Carolina team and you say, oh, why are they so good defensively? Well, she can guard 1 through 3. She can guard 1 through 4. She can guard 3 through 5. You know, there's just, you switch and it doesn't much matter. You still don't have an advantage on the defensive end. But I say it by means of that combined with the three-point shooting. The three-point shooting, something that clearly Dawn knew needed to change. I asked her about it. I remember early this year. They ultimately, as a team, shot 39.5% from three. That was third in the country. A team that last year ultimately lost to Iowa because of its difficulties shooting from deep. It again goes back to Dawn being able, by sweating the details, to have the team she wants in a moment where the transfer portal means more people are leaving than ever before. Where do you see sort of that connection, that rubber hitting the road between who Dawn Staley is and how her teams are put together and play?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think her teams have always been a reflection of her. You know, Dawn Staley cares. She's demanding, and she doesn't compromise her standard of excellence, regardless. And you know, the best part that Dawn was vulnerable this week. I think people may have missed that piece of it. Is how vulnerable Dawn was throughout the week and sharing with the media, hey, I had to change. It was a challenge for me. I didn't know if this team could, you know, get to the Final Four, right? You often don't hear leaders express their vulnerability the way she did, right? And when you think of the depth and you think of that team, as she mentioned in the post-game press conference, it had to be developed throughout the season so that they could have moments like this.
Yeah.
And, you know, I look at a couple of things that, you know, I didn't get a chance to get into my game story, but, you know, they're up 3 at the half on Sunday. And who comes out in the third quarter and really gets them going offensively? Chloe Kitts, Bree Hall.
Mm-hmm.
Right, I think they combined for like maybe 8 of the first 12 points for South Carolina to start that third quarter. You know, Cardozo was a factor throughout. After the slow start, Malaysia Fawali came in and, you know, steadied them, scored 7 points in that first quarter. Which, you know, again, these are like small, you know, these are small things. I think about Friday's game against NC State in the semifinals. Against Iowa last year in the Final Four, South Carolina was 4 for 20 from 3.
Mm-hmm.
In the third quarter against NC State, South Carolina made 5 3-pointers.
Yeah.
In that one quarter, and you know, and Wes Moore said it best: when they're hitting, there's nothing you can do.
They were 8 for 19 against both NC State and Iowa. It's just fundamentally they played the way this team was designed to play. I do just to your point though, by the way, and it almost doesn't matter who you named. Everyone was ready for their moment is the thing, you know, and you wrote that terrific Tessa Johnson piece. There's Dawn and her coaching staff just has her teams ready to play for and win championships. And it just feels to me like that has to start from the top. That has to start from somebody who is thoughtful about her moment when the moment comes. Camilla comes from a transfer. Tahina Paopao transfers. Her recruits, who she sticks with, people like Bree Hall, you don't just see them do well for her. You see them get better. I mean, Bree Hall is such a we could do a show just on Bree Hall alone, right? You see somebody. What did she do when you say Dawn needs better 3-point shooting? Well, Bree Hall doubled her attempts per game this year and went from 35 to 39% from 3 and became one of the better 3-point shooters in the country.
And even Raven Johnson, I mean, you know, she worked on her 3-point, you know, because obviously it was a big point discussion last year after the Iowa game. And I mean, she had moments throughout the year. I mean, look at what she did against Indiana.
They don't win that without Raven Johnson. They do not do it. Raven Johnson went from 24 to 35% from three, increased her attempts per game. It's just remarkable. A lot more to get to, though. I want to talk South Carolina historical context, because we are in the midst of something that now has to be talked about, like UConn, like Tennessee, like even those programs that predate NCAA women's basketball, like Immaculata and Delta State. So I want to think that through with you here in segment 3 in South Carolina history. So right back with that. But first, want to talk to you guys about Game Time, one of our sponsors today as well. And look, sometimes buying tickets can be a frustrating experience. I have an older daughter who is still bitter about the Taylor Swift experience and a associated Olivia Rodrigo experience, because doing it directly with some companies, not so easy to do. I have a younger daughter who is very passionate about the game of basketball. And that's where Game Time comes in. Game Time doesn't just give you the opportunity to get the tickets you're looking for, last minute ticket deals, you name it. And they tell you exactly what you're going to have to pay. But Game Time has, and this is my favorite part of the Game Time app, they'll show you not just where you're sitting, but what your view is. And again, I have a very precise daughter who wants to know exactly what part of the game she is going to be able to see when I take her there on my busman's holidays, when we are often not working to cover the game of women's basketball as well. So you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets. That's what Game Time does. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and you can use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply. But again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back here with the great Rob Knox, I am Howard Megdal, Locked On Women's Basketball, talking about South Carolina in historical context. And when I say that, I'm going to throw out sort of a few numbers for us to keep in mind. Dawn's got 3 championships now. If you look at the coaches with the most, Dawn's got 11, Gina Auriemma at UConn, Pat Summitt 8 at Tennessee. Dawn has said she doesn't want to coach as long as Gino, although she didn't say that this year, which was interesting. She's always very quick to say, I ain't sticking around as long as Gino did. I'm not sticking around as long as Tara did. She didn't sound like somebody who was real eager to be bringing down the curtain. And frankly, if I had the team she had coming back, I wouldn't want to do that either. But you are talking about a team that is now 35-2 2 years ago, 36-1 last year, 38-0 this year. You put all that together, that's a run unlike many we have seen with anyone in this sport. You also, again, and this kind of goes back to my point, at UConn, they have these disparate teams that have had these periods. You had, the Sue Diana years. You had the Stewie and Mariah Jefferson and Morgan Tuck years. Dawn has done this. You go back 2 years ago, it's a very different team from what she has now. The continuity, the point of continuity really on that team is Dawn Staley. And so I asked you this, even Delta State, right? With Lucia Harris, Immaculata, you had Marianne Stanley, Kathy Rush. What is Dawn creating here? And are we talking about a standard of excellence that is different than anything we've seen before, especially taking into account that the sport is harder than it's ever been?
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack there. I think what Dawn in South Carolina are doing now is amazing. Like you said, because the sport has exploded and has grown, and the visibility is there, and the talent is obviously more spread out naturally, and it's harder. Now, again, not saying that it wasn't hard, back then when Stewie and, Bird and Tarazi and all the great Tennessee teams and things of that nature, because I think every era is different and it's hard, and it's always hard to compare eras. Sometimes we do get lost in that, and you never want to take away from with Immaculata or Delta State or the Pat Summitt Tennessee teams, and obviously the modern day Geno teams have done did. But what South Carolina is establishing, I mean, just think about it. South Carolina is one bad night away from being a 3-time national champion.
That's right.
Which even highlights how difficult it is to win a national championship, right? Because in the tournament, it takes you have one bad night. Caitlin Clark had 41 points last year, right, in the semifinal game. So and you take South Carolina in this context. This is a run of excellence that's going to continue for a while, because again, Dawn understands the types of student athletes she recruits. She understands the preparation it takes, and as she's displayed this year, she's also willing to change as a leader to adjust to her team, which is super important, right?
It's really an important point that can't be lost, right? It's not like there's a Dawn Staley type of team that has to play in a certain way and do things in a particular offensive strategy or defensive strategy. I mean, my favorite change in terms of South Carolina from last year to this year, South Carolina this year in possessions per 40, 49th in the country. 49th in the country. You go back last year, 206th. So totally changed the way in which they approach things. I remember watching that opener against Notre Dame, and there's been some chatter of like, nobody believed in South Carolina. It's like you watch one half of their opener, and you're like, oh, this is going to be the best team in basketball this year. Like this wasn't like some evolution, and oh my God, South Carolina's struggling on the road.
It was, Howard,
they were amazing right away.
Yeah, exactly, and it was funny because they it had me fooled, because I was like, okay, they came into the season ranked 6, so you really don't know what to expect. You lose 5 players to the WNBA, which is it's crazy to me when I think about it. Yes. And three of those 5 were top 10 draft picks. It's just so mind-boggling to me, right? That but then you look at that Notre Dame game and they blow Notre Dame away, and you come back and you see the type of year that Notre Dame had, and you're sitting there like, wow. And the thing, I
just gotta let's emphasize that point, right? Like teams like to say nobody believed in us, right? Everybody likes to say it. The teams that nobody believed in like to say it. The teams that everybody believed in like to say it. There is not. I had a lot of conversations around women's basketball day one. Nobody was sitting there and I was like, oh well, that must be a fluke to South Carolina. Everyone was like, oh, Dawn came with this team, and then there's an understanding everyone's going to chase them all year. So let's just get that out there. That's hard too, but this is not like some scrappy underdog story.
Right, of course. No, of course not. But I think what this team had a lot of grit, a lot of belief, and again, I think a lot of that was because of Staley, right? Because
no doubt.
Think about the LSU game, the regular season game. LSU comes out, balls of fire, house of fire. At home, they got the crowd going up double digits. This is going to be the revenge game from last year, and LSU is going to make this big statement and everything like that. And slowly but surely, South Carolina methodically got back in the game. They were down double digits after a quarter. I think it was like 6 or 8 at halftime, and it was like 3 or 4 going into the fourth quarter. And they were like well positioned. And think about the other day against Iowa. Iowa goes up 10-0, crowd going crazy, building's crazy. And Dawn's just sitting on the bench, like she's just watching them warm up. Yeah. Like, and so it's funny because one of the coaches had, a coach had tweeted something about the start of the game and how Dawn was calm. And I responded because I was like, yeah, because if that was me, I've been throwing a clipboard or something. And when Caitlin comes out and, you're like, oh my God.
It's what her team needed. It's like she understood this is, and the joke she always made and players adopted it was, it's like daycare, but so what did Dawn need to be? Dawn needed to be the adult in the room for this. And that's what she was. But like, it's so easy to look, and this kind of brings us full circle to even what she says, what she does, right? Like, so easy to look in retrospect, in hindsight, and be like, well, those were the things that had to be said and done in that moment. But a perfect season means Dawn had to be perfect too, and did it in a different way. And it's just remarkable. And again, I've said this before. I will say it again. Um, I'm going to tell my grandchildren someday that I got to cover Dawn Staley. That is
Same here.
the level of figure that we are dealing with. And every time we have the chance to do it, I have a chance to learn from her. I have a chance to hear what she has to say. I have a chance to see up close what she is doing. And we get a chance to amplify that all together. And it is something I do not take for granted. I know you don't take for granted either. But
I had to pitch myself. A few times this weekend. Just getting an assignment to cover South Carolina this week was just a blessing beyond words.
wow, you killed it, as you have all year, as you have on your HBCU coverage for us, as you have on everything that's coming ahead. Rob Knox, delighted to be working with you. Honored to call you a friend. To our listeners, thank you for being with us every day. We will, of course, be back with you tomorrow. There is no off season when it comes to women's basketball, and we are here to let you know all about it. So until then, I am Howard Megdal, wishing all of you a wonderful Tuesday.
Ogunbowale for the win. Good!
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball.